Yeah, that's great. And I think talking about that kind of diversity of background, diversity of experience, different approaches, mindsets, the ability to communicate with different departments, um, the change management aspect
Mm-hmm.
is fundamental to this whole external capacity conversation. Like I say, if you just take the contract and temp side of it, there's a fairly clear path to do that. And the MSPs are very well versed in that side of it as well. But that's been around since 2000. Kind of that was in the early days of it. But when you take the services procurement, the statement of work side of it, for a lot of organizations, that's where a large part of the change management has to take place. And unfortunately, it touches a lot of departments, and it's a lot of internal buyers that need to get stuff done, and they need to get it stuff done right now. Um, Getting the buy-in and making that change management process happen, you've got a kind of tactical unit, or tactical strategic, but like a SWAT team that can get
Mm-hmm.
this stuff done. But it sounds like you had some pretty good, or you were able to get good executive buy-in to this as well in terms of supporting that. So I feel like that's quite important. Would you agree?
I do. I do, and I've spoken about this before. It's so important. I think my business case, it went up through finance at the time. Again, I wasn't reporting to the CFO. I do now, but he had to say yes to this. And I went, to legal. I went to well, it was mostly, it was finance and legal that I really had to get the buy-in for this. And then my VP was all in. I mean, I think it was scary in some ways because we hadn't really seen it, and it almost was scary simple once I wrote the business. It was overwhelming to think about how am I going to write this? What am I going to like? How am I going to express, what I'm envisioning, and how is that going to come out on paper financially? It ended up being a lot more simple. I think the hardest thing is trying to get other executives in the company to even understand what we do. I still feel like I'm explaining things, and I'm in a company where we switch over leadership quite a bit. Not
Right.
like not because it's bad, but I think we have a somewhat newer CEO, and that whole a new CFO. But leadership in the IT world has changed a lot and shifted a ton since I've been in the last 2 to 3 years. So really getting them up to speed every time somebody new comes on, like how does it work here? Because at my old company, this is how it worked. Um, so my VP did a great job, I think, amongst his peers to get them to understand what we were doing. But it has literally taken, you know, 2 years for people to understand what we actually did. And it was a huge thing. And it wasn't small. And I think it's just now catching up. And I tell you, like, change management is still happening. It's
Yeah.
happening all of the time. I'm still like we're getting ready. My VP and I are going to do a roadshow this year for procurement in particular because the perception, we implemented another new tool, which is our intake tool, a procurement tool, which is pretty well known now. It's new, but it's a startup. And we're helping that they got to move faster for us because we're moving fast, right? And
Good.
and it's become the tool. But people, view our technology as awful because they're so reluctant to adopt anything new. Nobody wants to change how they do things. They want to go around the system. They want to, get their stuff done, like you said, as soon as possible at any cost. So getting people to really take a step back, our CFO has been like super in slowing things down and really, understanding what we're spending money on. How does that look from this area? Um, I think putting some gates in place have been helpful. I might have just veered off of your original
No, no,
question, but
no, no, no.
getting that buy-in. And we're we're because I have my own, this is the piece I'm going to say about the MSP too. Because I have my own team that are full-time employees, the ownership has been such a big key to the change and the
Right.
success of the change. I could have never done what we have done, especially this fast, without having it internal and having our own employees. At least I never saw that happening outside with an MSP. When you are actually an employee of the company that you're trying to affect the change, like it becomes more of an ownership. It's an ownership thing, in my opinion. Everybody on my team has a stake in this. Like they want this to succeed. We're killing like our metrics when it comes to different things that we manage. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think the buy-in has been it had to be there for the business case, but then now the buy-in, when you talk about buy-in, it's more about them understanding what we actually are and what we do and how we can help them and how we can serve them and all of those things. I mean, that's the new phase. If you would have told me 6 years ago, this is going to take 6 years for you to get to this place, I probably would have been so overwhelmed. I would have been overwhelmed.
Yeah,
And last year, yeah, I kind of try to have a theme every year with my team of like what's this year going to be about. And last year was definitely you have to start somewhere.
yeah,
The
yeah,
first
yeah.
6 months was getting it up and running and getting everybody trained and getting everybody settled and trained in even just contingent labor. But this last year was our first full year, and it was literally like we have to start somewhere. So like anytime something seemed overwhelming, it's like, well, let's just start here and work our way to whatever that goal is. And I'm a firm believer in is if you identify something, you got to do something, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, there's the only was it there's nothing worse than a bad decision other than no decision.
Yes.
And it's just that kind of one step at a time mentality. Otherwise, it
Yes.
is just totally overwhelming. And I think the problem that has existed in the market, particularly around the services procurement side of this whole kind of external labor story, is the fact that it's just too big to do for a lot of people. Like you say, some of the tools, the cost, the implementation time, the amount of spend that needs to be included in the program straight away, the change management, if it's got to be big, people just can't move it. And so
Yeah.
it doesn't progress. Whereas actually, I'm seeing a lot more evidence now of people start small, eat the elephant one bite at a time, prove
Hmm.
it, move on, prove
Hmm.
it, move on, and actually build that support internally. And I think when you talk about the buy-in, it's really interesting listening to you talking about the change management buy-in, which is more across the organization, and then the executive buy-in, and actually getting people to understand it. But I think once the C-suite grasp the fact that, you know, this is about the organization getting work done, whatever service that organization is providing or whatever product they're selling to their customers, work needs to be done. So the people running the company need to know what's our total capacity, what's our total capability, what are my options? If I want to get something done, how can I do it? If this changes, what's going to cover me? And when organizations don't have services procurement covered or within a program or visible, which most organizations don't, they're just missing out a chunk where it's just that's a fundamental part of how their organization does things. And therefore, it directly affects their ability to compete in the market. So that's where, again, it comes back to me. I always have to suspend disbelief sometimes if people are just not interested in trying to grasp this stuff, because it's like, well, how's your organization going to compete in the market? If you're spending 600 million or 1.5 billion a year on this stuff and you haven't got it under control, that's a pretty big risk to take, it feels like to me, in terms of, well, what if your main competitor actually does have this stuff under control? They're going to have better supplier relationships. They're going to get better work out of their suppliers. They're going to save costs. They're going to manage risk better. So I think the executive side of it, if you can explain it in the right way and if they're enlightened to that, that's sometimes easier than getting the buy-in from the actual people within the organization, because they're just thinking, something else I have to do, another hoop I have to go through. But that's where you guys have got to win the hearts and minds and say, look, we're here to help you. We're here to help the business. We're not here to be in your way.
Yeah, all of that. And when you were talking just now, I was thinking about, managed services and then your time and material, your fixed fees, all of the SOW work that we've done over the years. It's been very between, you know, the business, the supplier, and, the procurement person. And our program was really left out of it unless it was just to administratively like put them in the system and manage that. We've taken it such a different level now, and we're so intertwined. And I am I have a new vision this year. It's like you got to start somewhere last year. This year is like it's really getting back to procurement. What is procurement here for? Like why are we here? Because in a lot of companies, the business kind of can get a hold of driving the spend for their own purposes, and we can get lost in the convenience versus the the value or the best for your money, right? Or what does that look like? And I'm treading lightly here to not like say, I think it happens across the board. I think you sometimes you have the business driving where we go for the people, what people we have, all the things. And I'm trying to get my group more mature in a way of where you want to come to us to get
Right.
the best talent, but you also want to come to us to get the best suppliers. We